In the last video, we discovered that statins probably aren't damaging our brains. But that raises an even bigger question. What about cholesterol itself? If cholesterol can block arteries in the heart, could it also damage the brain? For years, the answer seemed obvious. High cholesterol is bad for your heart. And because the brain depends on blood flow, high cholesterol must be bad for your brain too. But when researchers actually followed people over time, the story became more strange. Because in some studies, high cholesterol was linked to dementia. In others, low cholesterol was linked to dementia. And in the newest research, the biggest warning sign may not be cholesterol being too high or too low. It may be cholesterol changing too much. So today, we're asking one question. Does high cholesterol cause dementia? And the answer is not as simple as the headlines make it sound. Cholesterol has a terrible reputation. We hear the word and immediately think of blocked arteries, heart attacks, and strokes. But cholesterol itself is not a poison. Your body needs it. It helps build cell membranes, it helps produce hormones, and your brain contains a surprisingly large amount of it. In fact, cholesterol is important for the structure of brain cells, the connections between neurons, and the protective coatings around nerves. So, cholesterol is not simply bad. The problem is when certain types of cholesterol are out of balance. LDL is often called bad cholesterol because high levels can contribute to plaque building up in blood vessels. HDL is often called good cholesterol because it helps move cholesterol away from tissues and back to the liver. Triglycerides are another type of fat in the blood, often linked to diet, metabolism, and cardiovascular risk. For the heart, the story is fairly clear. High LDL cholesterol over many years increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. But the brain is more complicated because dementia is not one disease with one cause. It can involve Alzheimer's pathology, vascular damage, inflammation, diabetes, blood pressure, genetics, frailty, sleep, and many other factors. So, cholesterol became a suspect not because it obviously causes dementia, but because it sits at the intersection of two systems, heart health and brain health. The strongest case against cholesterol comes from midlife. Several long term studies have found that people with higher cholesterol in middle age have a higher risk of dementia later in life. That makes intuitive sense. If high LDL cholesterol damages blood vessels over decades, it may also damage the small blood vessels that supply the brain. Think of it like plumbing. If the main pipes are under strain for years, eventually the smaller pipes suffer too. The brain is incredibly sensitive to blood flow. Even small changes in oxygen delivery, inflammation, or vascular damage can affect memory and thinking over time. This is one reason modern dementia prevention research increasingly focuses on cardiovascular health, blood pressure, diabetes, smoking, obesity, exercise, and cholesterol. The 2024 Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention identified high LDL cholesterol in midlife as one of the modifiable risk factors associated with dementia. So, if we stop there, the message seems simple. High cholesterol in midlife is bad for the brain. But then something strange happens. As people get older, the pattern starts to change. In older adults, cholesterol doesn't behave the way many people expect. Some studies have found that very low cholesterol in later life is associated with higher dementia risk. Others have found no clear relationship. Some have found that both very low and very high levels may be linked with the worst outcomes. That is called a U shaped relationship. At one end, risk is higher. In the middle, risk is lower. And on the other end, risk rises again. This is where the story becomes more interesting. Because if high cholesterol is always bad, why would low cholesterol sometimes appear risky? One possibility is reverse causation. That means cholesterol may not be causing dementia. Instead, early disease processes may be causing cholesterol to fall. For example, if someone in the very early stages of dementia might lose weight, they might eat less, they may become frailer, their metabolism may change, their cholesterol may drop. So, when researchers measure cholesterol and later diagnosis of dementia, it can look as though low cholesterol predicted dementia. But the low cholesterol may have been a sign that something was already changing in the body. That's why single blood tests can be misleading. They capture one moment in time, but dementia develops over years, sometimes decades. So the better question is not just, what is your cholesterol today? It may be, how has your cholesterol changed over time? That is what makes the 2025 study in Alzheimer's research and therapy so interesting. Researchers looked at data from 2,452 adults aged 60 and over from a memory clinic registry in Taiwan. These were not just people who had one blood test. They had repeated cholesterol measurements and cognitive assessments over several years. The researchers looked at total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, and triglycerides. They also separated people into different cognitive stages. Some had subjective cognitive decline or mild cognitive impairment. Others had dementia. Then they asked, which cholesterol patterns predict dementia onset or further cognitive decline? And the result was not a straight line, it was U shaped. Both low base cholesterol values and extreme reductions in cholesterol were associated with increased risk of dementia onset or progression. The stronger signals appeared around HDL cholesterol and triglycerides. This matters because it challenges the simple idea that lower is always better for brain health in older adults. For cardiovascular disease, lower LDL cholesterol can be very important. But in older adults at risk of cognitive decline, a sudden or extreme change in lipid levels may tell us something else. It may be a marker of vulnerability, frailty, weight loss, inflammation, poor nutrition, or underlying disease progression. The researchers were careful not to say cholesterol changes cause dementia. Instead, they suggested that lipid instability may be a warning sign. That is a subtle but important difference. So, does this mean older people should avoid lowering cholesterol? No, that would be the wrong conclusion. This was an observational study. It can show associations, but it cannot prove cause and effect. It also studied people in memory clinics, not the general population. That means the findings are especially relevant to people already experiencing subjective memory concerns, mild cognitive impairment, or dementia. But they should not be used to make medication decisions on their own. If your doctor has prescribed cholesterol lowering treatment to reduce your risk of heart attack or stroke, don't stop because of one study or one video. Stroke itself is a major risk factor for cognitive decline. So, protecting the heart and blood vessels still matters enormously. The more useful takeaway is this: in midlife, high LDL cholesterol appears to be one risk factor for later dementia. But in later life, especially among people already showing cognitive symptoms, the story becomes more complex. Very low levels, very high levels, or sudden changes may all deserve attention, not panic. Attention.